Hey guys, welcome back to my world of modeling. I'm Dan here as always, and in this video we're going to be continuing where we left off from the last video, covering some of the really cool scenic effects and details that I've done to my model railroad in the next part of this video. We'll be continuing from where we left off with Columbus Avenue, working into all the cool, unique scenery details that are on this layout. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and get started, guys. So again, we're going to start off at Columbus Avenue because that's where we actually did end the last video. And Columbus Avenue is obviously the center point of this area. This is how you get access to every other scene on this model railroad from this point, and it's the main railfan vantage point. I come to this area all the time. Every time I come to Fostoria, I'm in this spot where I like to railfan and take pictures. A lot of traffic gets through this line because this is the B&O Chicago line on CSX, so it's very busy. You get a lot of intermodal and freight traffic, lots of transfer traffic. So you get lots of slow moving trains, lots of switching, and all kinds of cool effects. So again, all this was a big priority getting it right. As you can see, I spent a lot of time trying to get all the scenes right. Starting again at the crossing though, the whole crossing itself was done, and basically what I did was then I had to get all the line side details and everything else correct. So in this case I installed some custom done Tichy crossing signals. These are for 2 tracks, as you can see, or actually 3 tracks. And then I basically had to plan out the pole routing and everything like that. All these poles are prototypical to where they need to be. As you can see, there's a jumble mess of poles over here, which we'll get to in a second. But these ones here are key to the scene as well, because this is one of the main lines that runs over the tracks for electricity for all these houses that would be going northward here down the street. So actually, as we look down this street, you can see we have some road signs that I actually did. You got the other crossing there with the weeds, the sidewalk, gas marker. You got a little telephone pole there. And then we actually have a little railroad crossing sign up against the wall. You got it all filled in with some static grass. On this side, you actually got the speed limit sign there, and then you have one of the poles. All this is done in the back with static grass. You got the little sidewalk running through there, and then you have the entirely ballasted alley, which is all prototypical. And this is actually one of the first areas where I modeled trees, was in this scene here. After I got my first batch of Scenic Express trees done, I knew I needed to have at least 3 in this scene to kind of blend it together, because this entire area is forested with trees, including pine trees. So I installed these in the corner, and I also did some bushes and things like that to enhance them. You can see that they really blend in nicely with the structure that's there, and then the alley portion as well. Getting up with a nice close personal shot, you can see how nice these trees look, complemented with the realistic bush effects. Everything blends together really nicely here, and the only reason why the trees stop is because we're basically up against the wall here leading on. But in real life, the trees would basically extend all the way past this building here. They go all the way past the industrial area. Now, I want to go ahead and turn the camera to the scene here. As you're standing on Columbus Avenue in real life, this is exactly how you would see it. You would be looking at the Verizon cell tower, and then the service building and the parking garage here for the vehicles and other little details and things like that that go along with this whole plant and everything else. So this is exactly what you would see standing on Columbus Avenue. And the reason I know this is because I've stood in this exact spot in real life many hundreds of times, taking pictures, getting all of this as accurate as possible. There's a lot of work into this whole area. So this large parking lot area is another area that I like to go and railfan all the time. Matter of fact, I usually will park here in real life to actually watch the trains. But there was a lot of planning involved in this, because I wanted to get the exact layout of this as realistic as possible, also in contrast with the street. I needed to blend all this together and also blend it together with the trackage. So the first thing that obviously took place was I laid in the track, I ballasted it, and then I went in and basically penned out the exact area that I needed to put in the gravel lot that is here around all the structures. All this is Woodland Scenics ballast mixed in with some fine gray, some light gray, a little bit of cinders, some browns. I used some concrete dust, concrete mix, things like that to kind of make it look a little bit more worn and blended. And you can see it's all glued in place very nicely. It's all completely solid. As you can see, it's not crumbling, which is great. After I got all that done, then I was able to go in and install my scratch-built structures. And again, if you want to refer to how I did all of these structures, just go back. I have a more detailed video covering on how I scratch-built all these structures. So this little 3-door shed here was then installed in the scene. And then I complemented it with some guard posts here, which are done with styrene. And I have tons of little details like this that I scratch-built. as you can see there. So this entire lot leads into the main entrance to the Verizon cell tower shack there. And all that is gated off, and it's completely fenced off from the public. So this whole scene here, again, I wanted to get right and accurate. So I went in here and I basically modeled a little transitional area where you have the alley that runs along the tracks here on the B&O, and then it leads into a different color of ballast and aggregate here. You can see it's all basically a different shade of ballast. I used some more buff tone ballast, laid all that in, and then glued it in place. I then went in and was able to figure out exactly where I needed to put the main Verizon shack and then the cell tower, which are the key parts of this scene. After I did that, then I was able to just go in and put all the other little accessory details. And one of the main details here, as you can see, are light posts, gas markers, and this very nice photo etched chain link fencing with the barbed wire there. So what I did for all that was I used some Alchem scale models fencing, and I used quite a few kits to do that entire scene as you can see it. I just basically put all that in, installed it, and then I modeled a little gate here, so the main entrance. And you can see that there's a lot of this buff tone ballast leading out of the plant entrance, just like how it looks in real life, where it all just kind of blends back out into this parking lot area. And again, the alley for CSX runs along this area, so there's a lot to go over here. As you can see, the fencing continues along the right-of-way there, along the maintenance building and then the shack. There's all kinds of cool little line sight details. It all leads through this alley along the B&O main there. Again, all that is ballasted, and then I actually did a little bit of shrubbery work along the fence to make it look like there's some weeds growing along the right-of-way. There's all kinds of cool little details like that. You got some weeds growing in the center there. As cars pass over that, usually there's going to be this raised portion in the stonework where it's untouched. Most of the traffic is on these rows here, if that makes sense. There will usually be like tire tracks and stuff leading through this alley where it's a little bit more pushed out. The center here is usually where weeds will grow, as I've seen in real life at this location. So I modeled all the weeds with static grass and basically used all those little elements to kind of blend everything together. Actually, looking at the B&O lead here, all this is done again with some flex track, which I cut in place, and it's a lot of splicing and dicing to get all the track work in. But you can see the yard sections lead up to these really nice Pico turnouts, which are installed in place. I basically scratch built my own switch stands for these and installed them, and then all this leads into this track here, which leads into another switch here, and it all continues off into these little branching sections of track. And you can see all the ballast work is really nice. It's spent a lot of time trying to get it to look right, kind of poorly maintained, a lot of areas where the ties are exposed and stuff like that. But all this entire scene, I mean, really speaks for the level of detail that I like to put into these kind of things. You can see the light posts all look really nice. They're all wired up. You got a shack, you got little gas markers and bushes and all kinds of other little cool details along this right-of-way section. You can see all the little weeds, all kinds of crazy little details to make this scene look way more authentic. And I think overall all this came out absolutely fantastic. I couldn't have gotten any more accurate than what I got here. There's a very nice overview of all those little details there in the back. And again, all the main structures. Alright, in the next part of the scene I modeled the other area around Columbus Avenue. This is another area I like to rail fan at, and it's just basically a little wooded area, a little patch of grass grows through here, and then you have the two B&O mains here. You have the Columbus Avenue shack here, and then you have some utility poles and things like that that are all wired up. I added all kinds of cool little details to enhance this scene. You got little gas markers, you got little vent pipes, all kinds of things like that, tons of weeds, ties, you got all kinds of little details and stuff growing around the shack. Tons of little line side details there. I, again, really went crazy with the detail. You can see the static grass looks really nice. You got the little gas markers there. All the ballast is nicely worked into the scenery as well. You got a little propane tank for the switch heater that's on the switch just past these trees here. Again, there's all kinds of little markers, bushes, shrubbery, the trees. All these little elements really help to enhance the scene, and again, this is all prototypical. So as we look at this scene from ground level, this is exactly what you'd see in real life. You have this really cool little area that leads up to the crossing with the utility poles. You got the little sidewalk there, which is all really neat. You got the relay cabinet there, and then all the scenery is very nicely blended in. And you'll notice that it's very limited you have very limited visibility of the tracks where the trains will actually run through, and this is something I wanted to model. You know, a lot of guys like to model their model roads where the train's completely visible. I like to have these elements where you only have certain spots where you can actually view the trains, because this is what the real location is like. There's only certain spots you can actually park your car and get into without being chased out by cops or CSX employees. So this is one of those big areas, and you can see it's a crucial one because it looks over this entire yard section and everything else. And then it's all wooded up very nicely. As you can see, it's all very well blended in together, and it's a key part of this scene that I wanted to model, and I think I got it pretty well damn right. This entire tree patch is there in real life, and again I used my Scenic Express trees that I purposely cut up and placed in position here to look like what's there in real life. You can see all this in the background is completely covered by these trees, and I like that element. You can see it's all enhanced with the bushes and other little details. So I mean, you could literally stick your camera in here, look through this just like you're standing in the woods, which I have before, to watch the trains. It's pretty crazy, huh? You can see the pole line runs all the way through these trees as well, and it leads up to this pole over here, which again is completely hidden by the trees. Now it leads into this other cool little area where the woods open back up, and then you have another cool little vantage point of all the little structures and stuff in the background. But again, it's another little hard to access place, but it's there in real life, and I wanted to model it. And you can also have this little area to be able to look under the massive signal bridge here on the B&O. You can see it's just another cool little vantage point. As we get past all this, again, you're in a pretty heavily dense wooded area, but then right where my camera would be is a bunch of houses. It's pretty crazy. So you can see, again, there's a lot of shrubbery and things like that along these trees. You have a relay cabinet here with the pole ending, and it actually goes across to the other end of the yard where there's actually a little supporting yard along the B&O right there, out of focus. So that's all really cool, but again, you get all these really cool little elements to this scene. I mean, you could set the camera right here, watch trains, and it looks very realistic, because that's exactly what you see when you're standing in the real location. It's pretty crazy. Here's an overall aerial view of the trackage. Notice the tracks are nicely maintained, the ballast is clean, and then as you look at the yard tracks, they're very poorly maintained. The ballast is different colored, it's finer grade ballast, and it's also blended in with tons of weeds, which is all prototypical to the real scene. You can see how that all is blended in. Now this siding here is the B&O siding. This is a major control point here where a lot of trains enter and get off the siding. A lot of trains store cars here. The local utilizes this siding to store trash cars, which, as you can tell, is a big reason why I wanted to model this area as well, because I love to model the trash trains that go through this area, and that the local routinely switches out. These tracks here are also used to store a lot of cars, so I'll be utilizing that, of course. But you can see how this is all laid out. Again, you got the nice little switch details here. You got all kinds of cool little line side details, tons of weeds, tons of static grass bushes and shrubs, all kinds of really cool little things. And all this leads into the third track, which is the B&O siding. Now as we get down to ground level here, I want you to pay close attention to the realistic transition in the trackage. Notice that the main lines stay relatively high elevated, and then the siding actually dips down and is kind of at ground level, and that's very realistic. I wanted to model that realism by having the tracks set at different levels, because that's all prototypical. The main lines are going to usually be higher up for drainage, and then the siding tracks are right in the ground, as you can see. You can see the siding track here is slightly elevated a little bit, but the others are pretty much in the ground level. Also notice all the weeds, all the debris and everything that's right in between the right-of-way there, all the grass growing up through the ballast. That is all very realistic, and another key thing to really enhance your scenes and make your track work really stand out. You can see it all looks very realistic when you look at this. Here we're looking at the B&O West End approach here to Columbus Avenue, and we're looking at the control point signal here, which is the massive signal structure. Again, that is scratch built for the most part, kit bashed completely with a bunch of different parts from BLMA signal bridges. And I've posted a video on how I made all my signal bridges and other accessory signals for this layout. But this one was the main one, so I wanted to install this, and then I did all this scenery basically around it. So it's just mounted at ground level, and then I got some realistic looking speed limit signs to complete the scene because they're there in real life. The main tracks are nicely maintained again, and notice here you got some weeds and stuff growing up through the tracks. You have a lot of foliage and things like that, and that's all realistic. That's a big area that gets a lot of weeds, so I modeled that. And as you can see, we get in have a really nice little scene of the yard. and the main entrance of the yard, and then the Verizon tower and shack. As we turn the camera here, we then get to this really cool scene where the tree line starts up. And as I mentioned before, there's trees on the opposite side of this building here, and they actually continue all the way around the building and then eventually come out and branch alongside the yard here. And one of the points that I modeled where the trees start is the little maintenance area for CSX. And what they have here is just basically what you see. You have a trailer, there's a gas marker, they have a couple cabinets, they have 2 guard posts guarding this diesel fuel tank here that has a little pump on it. You got a utility pole with the conduit running down, and then it's supplied with this main power pole here, which is installed. And all these trees again are the Scenic Express trees with green olive foliage. I did all of the leaf and ground cover backing with all the shrubs and everything. And then what's also really cool is that they got all these little areas where there's some rail, extra ballast, and all kinds of stuff laid out, some old ties and things like that. So I spent a lot of time cutting up extra rail, painting it, and then installing it all over the scene here. So you can see it really helps to kind of complete the look of an in-service rail yard. You get all these spare rail sections ready to go at a moment's notice, all laid out along the tracks here, along this little driveway path. And again, that's all prototypical. That's all what's there in real life. You can see there's another little gas marker all the way down, stretching all the way along this end of the model road. You can see we got that really nice tree background, and that's something that's really cool and will look really nice when I start doing some shots and stuff. And keep in mind too, I'll have cars stored in this whole yard, so that'll all look really cool. Again, take some really close attention to the way the ballast is on the track work. Notice the varying track heights. The main tracks are nice and high up. The main yard track lead is, and then all the other tracks around it are nice and low profile, basically right in the ground. And I love the way I did that. That was definitely cool to model that. As we look along this right-of-way too, where this poorly maintained siding is, you can see how the ballast kind of blends into the scene, and then the weeds really just take over. And this is where I'm still working on scenery right now. You can see I've been putting in these bushes, which are completely unfinished at this point. I just started putting some leaves on them, but they still need to get some final trimming. And then most of this will have some scattered trees all the way down this section, but you can see the bushes are just in place for now. And then I'm going to go back, start drilling holes as I get some trees ready to go. You can see I just finished another box of trees here. They're already painted up and ready for foliage. I'm just going to try to do that this weekend, get those done, and I'll be able to basically spread these out all along this section of track. So I'll basically have this really cool little canvas of trees for this entire section. Again, notice all the little weed patches and things like that all along the right-of-way. Notice how the ballast nicely transitions with the grass into the weeds and the bushes. That's all very prototypical and realistic. Also notice that there's cool little areas where grass is growing up through the tracks as well. Another really cool little thing that I wanted to do. So it's again all static grass, and it's just kind of randomly growing here and there. I got all kinds of little bushes, and these are all again key features to make your track work look very realistic. You'll also notice up to this point these rails are relatively polished off. When we actually get down here farther in the yard, I've left the tops of the rail heads dark brown to make them look like they've been unused, because for the most part this entire end section of the model railroad where the yard is not used. These tracks are usually vacant. Here now we're getting farther away from Columbus Avenue, and as we turn the camera over, we're again looking at the yard. And what I want to pay attention to here is all of the weeds coming up through these rails. Notice how they're all coming up through that track. Take a good note of that. That's all 4mm and 2mm static grass. That is all very realistic. It's all very prototypical. Makes your track look a lot more unused and less maintained. It's very cool, really nice. And then of course you got all the trees to complete the scene. And again, they go all the way down here. The siding continues to go on. And as we actually take the aerial view again, you can see as we go around, it's pretty much more of the same kind of scenery. And as we get to this corner where I'm currently stopped, you can see we branch off into this corner here, which will lead into the next fill-in modular section where the scenery is effectively stopped for now. The lighting over here is not very good. I got to work on getting some LED lights up here so I can kind of have them shining down. But just in this corner, just going off, basically what would be here, if I can get the freaking camera to focus, would just be the continuation of the B&O yard, and obviously these mainline tracks would continue going east, but again they're curved because of the modular constraints. But just in the corner again, you got a nice little open area with some static grass, got a little maintenance area with some ties, you got a flat car with some rails on it, Tons of weeds in this track. You can see the track is very unmaintained because it's just not used. You got some ballast piles there, and again all these nice trees that help kind of cover up that outlet there too, and then the tracks just continue to go on. There's some random cinders spilled all over the place. Again, you got some ties, and again on the end here you got some more utility poles, which I scratch built. They're coming through here. I'll be wiring those up pretty soon, and then in this area here again there's just some other little fine details, some more static grass fields, things like that. But that's pretty much completing this overview for now. That's where I've gotten to. Obviously, I still got to do tons of trees and add other little line side details, but this is what I've gotten done, and I'm pretty satisfied with the work. You can see we got this great long section of track where we can run a nice long train, and that's exactly what I wanted, and I couldn't have even imagined that it would come out this good. I'm very satisfied with it, and you can just see how much work is in this scene alone, and the fact that I got this all done in about 8 weeks is insane. I don't know how I did it, but I just pushed myself, made an effort. I did definitely pull some all-nighters out here on weekends, especially, where I was out here till maybe 5, 6 in the morning just baking trees, putting ballast down, cleaning track, all kinds of crazy stuff. So there you have it, guys. There's the overview of everything that we've gotten done. You can definitely tell this is my labor of love. I've spent so much time out here devoting time to making all these realistic structures, all these realistic scenes, and the fact that you guys can now sit here in the comfort of your home looking out at this scene, noticing how realistic this is. If you were to watch a video of Fostoria Columbus Avenue right now, this is what you'd see. This is exactly what it looks like. I didn't even imagine I would get it this close, and the fact that I'm here is, it's absolutely heartwarming, to be honest with you. I'm very anxious to get out here and start running trains, and that's basically how I have this set up. Basically, once I get most of these trees done, I'll be able to actually start running trains. I just got to come out and finally polish the track. But as you can see, guys, we pretty much have one side completed, and we have much more work to do, but that will all come in time. Thank you for watching this video, guys. Stay tuned for more content. I'll be posting more videos here pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe here on YouTube for more content. Follow my work on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook page is Dan's Custom Trains. My Instagram is Danny Dankinson. And you guys, again, can follow me there to see all of the kinds of projects that I'm doing, and of course, see pictures and updates of this model road. Thanks for watching, guys.